Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTGO Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is Blue-White Mechanized Production. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I think this will be going out on Thanksgiving. I'm not entirely sure, but I think so. Happy Thanksgiving. I have a fun deck for you guys today. This is Mechanized Production, a great way to make a lot of treasure tokens, play a Mechanized Production, and then the following upkeep, we win the game. And of course, if we don't do that, game 2 will be basically an Approach to Second Sun deck, so. But before we get into the video, make sure to like the video if you like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell right beside the subscription button to know when we upload a new video on the channel, and when we go live in the stream right here on YouTube. But without further ado, let's get right into it, starting off with Mechanized Production, a 4-mana enchantment or enchant artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. So the goal of this deck is to make lots of treasure tokens and then play Mechanized Production, and on the following upkeep, if we have 8 or more, we win the game. Mechanized Production also helps us in this in game 1 by creating tokens itself. So it's a great way to kind of like ramp into it too. That's not to say we can't use the treasure tokens for mana if we need them. We most certainly can, but Mechanized Production is really the only way in game 1 to win the match. So let's go over the other cards in the deck. Let's go over the enchantments first. We have 3 Anointed Procession, a 4-mana enchantment. If an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. So Anointed Procession is a great way to either make lots of tokens to get a Mechanized Production win, or to make lots of tokens to either make an approach to the second sun in game 2, or if we're running into a situation where we don't have a lot of mana, just making lots of tokens we can actually sack for some just regular mana. Either way, I'm pretty sure Anointed Procession is the most expensive card in this entire deck, but that's not to say it's not useful. Next up, we have 2 Ixalan's Binding, a 4-mana enchantment. Whenever Ixalan's Binding enters the battlefield, of course, exile target non-land permanent opponent controls until Ixalan's Binding leaves the battlefield, and your opponent can't cast spells with the same name as the exiled card. So Ixalan's Binding is probably most likely going to be used against something like a Vraska Relic Seeker, a Scarab God, Hazoret, things like that we really don't want to get into either destroying our enchantments, our artifacts, or destroying just our life total in general with the Hazoret, things like that. But we only have 2 Ixalan's Binding because we have the other 2 enchantments here for us. We have 2 Cast Out, a 4-mana enchantment with Flash. When cast out enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent and opponent controls until cast out leaves the battlefield. So with the 2 Cast Out and the 2 Ixalan's Binding, I'm kind of going a half and half approach here to make sure we have a Flash response against a Scarab God if they have mana up, or maybe a Ixalan's Binding against a more Vraska's the Relic Seeker kind of game plan for our opponent. Well, moving on from Ixalan's Binding and Cast Out, we have 2 Search for Azcanta, a 2-mana legendary enchantment. And of course, at the beginning of our upkeep, look at the top card of our library, you may put that into the graveyard. Then if you have 7 or more cards in the graveyard, you may transform Search for Azcanta. So Search for Azcanta, once it's flipped, we can pay 3 mana, tap it, and actually look at the top 4 cards of our library, put 1 non-land, non-creature card into our hand, and put the other cards on the bottom of our library. So most likely a flipped Search for Azcanta is going to grab us either an Anointed Procession, a Spell Swindle, or perhaps a Mechanized Production itself if we haven't drawn into it already. But that is it for enchantments. We have 13 in total. Let's move on to some spells. We have 3 Censor, a great way to either cycle for some nice card draw ability, or maybe just some canceling for some tapped out spells on the early game. Next up, we have 2 Essence Scatter because there is a lot of creature-based strategies in the meta right now. Essence Scatter is going to help us deal with those. Then we have 4 Supreme Will, a 3-mana instant, of course. Choose 1, counter target spell unless its controller pays 3 colorless, or look at the top 4 cards of our library, put 1 of them into our hand, and the rest on the bottom of our library in any order. Most of the time, Supreme Will is going to be used as a counter spell for us, but it can be used as a way to dig for a Mechanized Production, or an Anointed Procession, or maybe even a treasure map to get a treasure producer out on the battlefield. Next up, we have 2 Settled Wreckage, a 4-mana instant. Exile all attacking creatures target player controls. That player may search his or her library from that many basic land cards, put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle his or her library. All Settled Wreckage is really doing here is just kind of like holding off our opponent's attacking creatures, slowing them down, making sure we can get out our game plan as quickly as we can. After that, we have 2 Opt, so basically a way to scry 1, draw a card, so fantastic for us. Then we have 3 Spell Swindle, a 5-mana instant counter target spell, create X colorless treasure to artifact tokens, where X is that converted mana cost. And of course, treasure tokens is exactly what we want to be doing. One of the best ways to use Spell Swindle is to get out an Anointed Procession, and then the following turn, hold up a Spell Swindle, and then use that to get tons of treasure tokens on the battlefield. Moving on from the instance here, we have 1 Sorcery, 3 Fumigate, a 5-mana sorcery, destroy all creatures, you gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way. So against a heavy aggro strategy, or against a token-based strategy against us, a Fumigate is going to help kind of like give us some life and last the match. And the last 4 cards in the main board here, we have 4 Treasure Map, a 2-mana artifact that we can pay 1, scry 1, and put a landmark counter on Treasure Map. Then if there are 3 more landmark counters, remove those counters, transform Treasure Map, and we get 3 colorless treasure tokens. And of course, if we have an anointed procession on the battlefield, we're getting even more. Treasure map is a fantastic turn 2 play for us, a great way to kind of line up our draws, and just a fantastic way to get treasures overall. So treasure map and spell window are the real ways to get treasures throughout the match. And again, Mechanized Production, we really want to save that for the turn before we win the game. But that is it for all the cards in the deck besides lands. Let's go over lands real quick. We have 4 Glacial Fortress. Again, this is a buddy land that comes in tapped unless we control a plains or island. Then we have 4 Ipni Rivulet, because this is for a game 2 approach to the second sun situation. We have 2 Scavenger Grounds that just kind of represent a way to kill a Godfrey's Gift strategy, or maybe a Scrap Heap Scrounger against an aggro strategy. And then we have 9 plains and 5 islands. And that is the full 60. On game 1, of course, our game plan is to get a Mechanized Production win. And of course, in game 2, we're going to board against that because they're probably going to board in some enchantment removal. So we're going to board out Mechanized Production and most likely put in Approach to the Second Sun. So let's see what our Approach to the Second Sun strategy is in the sideboard. This is like another transforming deck like we did with the energy deck earlier in the week. First up, we have 3 Authority of the Consuls. Now, Authority of the Consuls is actually not a fantastic way for us to slow down the strategy for a Approach to the Second Sun deck, but it is a way for us to gain some life, slow down their creatures, and just kind of wait for us to get our 5 mana for a Fumigate. Of course, Authority of the Consuls is an enchantment. Creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, and whenever they enter the battlefield, we gain 1 life. So again, great tempo advantage and gaining life for us. Next up, we have 2 Essence Scatter, so 2 more Essence Scatter if we're up against a more heavy aggro strategy. We'll want to most likely bring these in over the Censor. Then we have 4 Negate, so if we're up against another's type of control strategy, a Negate's going to help deal with that as well. Again, it's just a 2-mana instant counter target non-creature spell. Next up, we have 2 Aether Meltdowns, so this is a great way to shut down a creature for us. A 2-mana enchantment with flash, enchant creature or vehicle, and when Aether Meltdown enters the battlefield, we get 2 energy, enchant creature gets -4, -0. So shutting down a Glorybringer, shutting down a Hazoret, things like that. Next up, we have a 1 of Disallow, because Disallow is in here. We really want to make sure that we don't have any kind of Planeswalker ultimate going off on us, anything like that. So Disallow is coming in here for a 1 of in the sideboard. Then we have 3 Approach to the Second Sun. So this is our game 2 game plan. So boarding in the Approach to the Second Sun after the Mechanized Production coming out. We could do 2 and 2 at the same time, but you do want to be careful of that because you're going to have a lot of situations where you only do half of the strategy. So just kind of be aware of that in game 1 and game 2. But overall, Approach to the Second Sun for us is a fantastic way to win the match in game 2. And that is the full 75, folks. On MTGO Traders is coming to a decent 46 tickets. I would say the most expensive card on MTGO Traders right now is probably Fumigate. Everything else is basically pennies. You have Search for Azcanta, that's a couple bucks. And while Anointed Procession is a money card in paper, on MTGO, it's actually quite cheap. But that is the full 75, guys. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comments below. I really wanted to make a Mechanized Production deck, and I really think a treasure deck here is the best way to do it, especially if we want a secondary win condition, which is Approach to the Second Sun. But of course, like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next video.